Alan, great to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Alan, you're an expert on balanced scorecard, and we'll get onto that in a short while. But more broadly, the economic downturn, it's forced so many businesses, particularly here in Dubai and to an extent the wider Middle East, to really, I guess, rethink the way that they do business. Some of the old habits and practices were proved to be not fit for purpose during the economic downturn, so they're putting those correct. And also looking forward to the upturn, which is hopefully just about beginning, and looking at how they can cash in on that. You, as I say, do an awful lot of work with major corporations here in Dubai and the Middle East. How are they rethinking business?
I think it depends on what industry they're in. I think real estate and finance clearly have had to have some major rethinks. But many other industries, from what I see, are simply redefining the timescale of rolling out their strategy, but they're not changing the fundamental direction they're going in. So it's a question of retiming rather than fundamental reappraisal. So very much dependent on the industry and how that industry has been impacted by the downturn.
You and I were talking a little bit earlier before we came on air, and there was one word that you kept repeating, and that was discipline. The downturn has forced companies to focus on discipline. You've got to be disciplined about the way you do things, disciplined about what you don't do perhaps, and disciplined about not just having a fancy strategy with a lot of nice buzzword and a PowerPoint presentation that says growth and focus and all that nonsense. It's all about execution and getting it done, having the discipline to get things done.
Very much. I think the downturn has been like a cold shower. I think it's made people reappraise their approach in management practices, and I think so many organisations come out of this difficult period leaner and fitter. And part of that leanness is an understanding of the need to define more clearly what they want to achieve, and to put around it the management disciplines that we've always had around, of measurement, of accountability, and so on, but to make sure that they are applied in a more rigorous way than perhaps we did 3 or 4 or 5 years ago in easier times.
Give us an example if you can. I know client confidentiality, you can't talk about individual companies, and that's fair enough, but tell us a story that kind of illustrates this, related to some of the work that you've done here recently.
Okay, I just think about one particular company where the focus has been to organise a whole transformation program, which is basically saying we want to be a business which is much better organised at achieving our long-term ambition. And those ambitions are classically the profit and the shareholder value. But to get there, we have to put in place a much stronger measurement discipline than we've previously had. Accountability is something which needs to be strengthened a great deal. We need to make sure that we incentivise people to perform and reward and recognise when they achieve, but also to put in place the disciplines of those who do not achieve. So it's the carrot and the stick, and I think one of the things that we're seeing is a much greater balancing of that carrot and stick than again we saw before the downturn.
Balanced scorecard is one of your specialisations. You've got decades of experience in corporate life. You're a head of planning and finance for a major bank with $1 billion of turnover. So you've been there within organisations before now. But balanced scorecard now is one of the things that you focus on. And perhaps, Alan, is it fair to say that maybe 3 or 4 years ago, during the boom when it was feeding time at the zoo, good old-fashioned things like balanced scorecard perhaps got forgotten? When it was all grow at all costs, and the idea of balance was really sort of terribly old-fashioned, and it was all about leverage and returns and so on and so forth. Are we seeing a back-to-basics approach, balanced scorecard, becoming fashionable again?
I think we are. I think that puts it very well, because businesses recognise the checks and balances that go with any long-term sustainable business. And the balanced scorecard helps you do that. So I think a greater focus on developing people, a greater focus on risk management clearly is a major theme in this day and age. And people recognise the advantages of, again, we come back to the word of discipline, but of disciplined business management. And life is not as easy. We have to work harder to achieve. And I think the scorecard is a tool which is helping that.
Just for those who aren't massively familiar with the balanced scorecard, a lot of people will be, but in a couple of minutes, summarise what it is and what are its central points.
Okay, very briefly, it's would normally be described as a tool to help organisations manage their strategy. So in the first place, it helps them to articulate clearly what is the strategy in a more measurable sense than perhaps we had a decade or two ago. Secondly, it puts in place a regular measurement discipline. So we have converted our strategy from nice words, as we used to have, as I say, a few decades ago, into measures, targets, and a regular monitoring discipline which helps management keep on track. So the whole focus is, let's be very clear what the strategy is in measurable terms. Let's make sure we deliver, and if we're not delivering, let's make sure we understand that we have gone off track, why we have gone off track, and whether we need to take remedial action.
And here's the thing, often the balanced scorecard doesn't produce particularly pleasant results, does it? It can be the truth, and often the painful truth. Are managers, chief executives, a bit more receptive to the painful truth, and they're more prepared to listen to it?
I think they are. I mean, you know, any professional manager recognises that the business world is a combination of good and not so good news. And I recall...
They probably didn't 3 years ago. I possibly in this town more than most.
Yeah.
But any naysayer who was suggesting that perhaps 20% economic growth per annum wasn't sustainable for 50 years would be sort of shouted down as, oh, you're just being negative, party pooper.
Yes, to some extent, and I think Dubai is a special case in that regard, and I would accept that point. But I think generally as managers stand back, they realise the necessity for these issues. And I recall working with a bank, not in the GCC, but not in the United Arab Emirates, and the chairman there, who understood the scorecard very well indeed, and his edict to all his managers was, I expect to see 1/3 of the measures green, 1/3 yellow, and 1/3 red. Let's not deceive ourselves that everything is perfect. Equally, let's not be too critical. So I want to see a balance between good performance, not so good, and areas that seriously require attention. That is real life in business, and that's what the scorecard should reflect.
We've touched on some of the peculiarities of the Middle East. You've got a foot in both camps, the mature, developed world, for want of a better expression, in the United Kingdom, and an emerging market here in the Middle East, and you split your time kind of 50-50 between the two. Are there any tangible differences?
I think those differences are getting smaller all the time, because I think what we're seeing throughout the GCC, but again especially in the UAE, is the take-up of modern management practice. I think we're seeing at a top level, both in the commercial world and in the public sector, the drive for better managed performance. So I think any gaps that we might have seen 10 years ago between, should we say, the West and the Middle East, I think in these business practices has narrowed a lot.
And perhaps more specifically, differences between a country like the UAE and other neighbouring countries. I mean, I was travelling around the Gulf a little bit over the past few weeks or so. And I tell you what, Alan, you know, Dubai's had its detractors over the past month or so, particularly the newspapers that you pick up in the morning when you're sitting in the United Kingdom. But you go around the Gulf, as I've been doing recently, and you realise just how far ahead, certainly on the surface, Dubai is from many of its neighbours in terms of just basic things like airports, like hotels, like infrastructure, shopping malls, restaurants, so many things. But that's not looking under the bonnet of companies, is it? On the surface, Dubai is much further ahead. How about in terms of strategy and management thinking and execution?
Two comments. First of all, I fully agree. I've just come back from a trip which included Kuwait and Riyadh, and there is no question that the UAE and Dubai in particular is way ahead in so many facets of infrastructure and normal life. But I think what we do see in businesses in the UAE is strong management performance. And I would particularly relate it to the public sector. The change I've seen, shall we say, in the last 5 years, is not so much in the private sector, although that clearly has developed and matured, but it's a major change in the public sector, with governments from the top down pushing hard to put in place good management practices. And I think in that area in particular, the UAE is well ahead of the rest of the GCC, from what I see.